Advisor today, where he'll be briefed on events happening around the world. The meeting comes amid questions over whether Trump has been taking his daily intelligence briefings. CNN's Jessica Schneider is following the story. She joins me now with more. Good morning.
Well, good morning, Carol. You know, CNN has asked the transition team repeatedly, is the president-elect getting these daily briefings by U.S. intelligence, especially in the wake of the overseas attacks this week? All they're telling us, though, is that he is being briefed by his national security advisor, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, but that's essentially secondhand information. We have learned that Trump will meet with Flynn today. It will be for a briefing on events around the world, as well as staffing discussions, and the meeting was scheduled before the attacks took place. Now, CNN has also learned that Trump is averaging one presidential briefing per week, with some weeks as many as 3. They are, of course, available every day. We also know that the president-elect is vacationing in Florida, and while he's there, he does have someone available directly to him 24/7 to inform him on the latest intelligence, something that is customary for presidents while they travel. Now, in the midst of all these questions about his briefings, the president-elect did take to Twitter this morning to change the dialogue to, once again, the Electoral College, stressing that he specifically campaigned to win the 270 electoral votes necessary, that he could have won the popular vote if that was the name of the game, and then firing off this tweet about Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump tweeting, "I have not heard any of the pundits or commentators discussing the fact that I spent far less money on that win than Hillary on the loss." Now, these comments coming on the heels of former President Bill Clinton speaking Monday about his wife's nearly 3 million vote lead. But of course, as we saw Monday in the Electoral College vote, Carol, it is official. Donald Trump will be president, so unclear why he keeps tweeting about the election itself.
Okay, so we won't talk about them anymore then.
That's right.
Jessica Schneider, thanks so much. Even as investigators overseas were trying to sort out the facts of multiple terror attacks, Trump had already jumped to his own conclusions. He tweeted, quote, "Today there were terror attacks in Turkey, Switzerland, and Germany, and it is only getting worse. The civilized world must change thinking." But that was not entirely true. The attack in Switzerland was not terror-related. The gunman was a Swiss national, and police say he had no known links to terror groups, and he attacked a mosque. When it comes to Russia's hacking of the U.S. election, Trump claimed the White House only brought up the subject after Hillary Clinton lost. Actually, the White House said in October that Russia was behind the hacks. Critics say this is disturbing because it's unclear if President-elect Trump is getting intelligence briefings on a consistent basis. So let's talk about that and more. With me now, national political reporter for Real Clear Politics, Rebecca Berg, and Washington Bureau Chief for the LA Times, David Lauder. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks,
so, Rebecca, we do understand that Mr. Trump will meet with his national security advisor, Michael Flynn, today before the Christmas holiday sets in earnest and get an intelligence briefing. Should Americans be concerned?
Well, it is problematic, Carol, if Donald Trump, moving forward, and especially after he's sworn in, is not receiving this presidential daily briefing, which is different, as Jessica noted in her report, from Michael Flynn, Donald Trump's national security advisor, giving him this information secondhand. As we've seen from Michael Flynn, sometimes he can get his facts confused a little bit. He has trafficked in some conspiracy theories. So it's important that Donald Trump is getting this information straight from the source, straight from the intelligence community. And it's not only really a matter of getting this information daily to be able to make his decisions as president on a daily basis, but if there's an international crisis that pops up that Donald Trump wasn't expecting, he needs to know what's going on in the world, needs to have a sort of baseline sense of what's happening so that he can make a decision in that moment, a moment of great pressure and international crisis. So it is important once he is sworn in as president that he be getting this information on a consistent basis. And it's important now even because here is someone who has never served in elected office, never served in the military, doesn't have sort of a baseline of information that he's working with. And so it's important that he get up to speed before he is sworn in so that he's able to make those big decisions.
So David, because he's not having daily briefings with intelligence officials, is that why he may tweet out these erroneous things?
Well, it's a good question, Carol. I mean, you know, there are two competing theories, really, about what Trump is doing. One is that he says things because he feels that they're politically helpful to him, or because it just is sort of a spontaneous thing that occurs to him, that he doesn't have much of a filter, and that's possible. The other is that he really doesn't exactly know the facts of what's going on. The latter is obviously the more disturbing one in a president, and it's hard to know, of course, because the president-elect, unlike previous presidents-elect, has not held a press conference. He hasn't actually held a press conference in almost half a year at this point in terms of a full question and answer session with the press. So we've had very little opportunity to get a sense of how he's thinking about things, what his chain of thought is. We're left to sort of interpret little glimmers here and there from tweets and things like that. And that's given rise to a lot of questions that he really hasn't put to rest about how much does he really know about what's going on in the world. Is he is sheltering himself in a bubble, or is he just sort of popping off about things that occur to him?
Maybe this is part of a wider plan that we just don't know about, Rebecca. Maybe he wants to throw other countries off guard and then go through it to kind of intimidate them into doing business with the United States down the line.
And certainly he did say during the campaign, Carol, that he wanted to be unpredictable in terms of his strategy with foreign policy and national security. But with the briefings in particular, Donald Trump said in a recent interview that he's just a smart guy, that he doesn't think he needs these briefings on a daily basis, doesn't need to hear the same information over and over again. But the briefings aren't really about, you know, being smart or not smart. They're about giving you the information you need to do your job as president, and also to have this conversation with your intelligence community.
Right, I understand that, but you could cite an example of how it might have worked for Donald Trump with China and the drone, right? Because he tweeted out that he didn't like what China did. He made it very clear, right, that China did something wrong, and China returned the drone lickety-split, David. So maybe that sort of thing works sometimes.
Well, you know, there is a theory that you do better when you keep your adversaries off balance. Richard Nixon used to have what he called the madman theory, that it was great if other countries thought that you were a little crazy and that you might retaliate in a way that they weren't expecting. The problem, of course, with that strategy is that it has a higher risk, and you got to make sure that you get it right. And that's why having a really firm grasp of the details of what's going on is important, so that you can make the judgments about where you can push the risk and where maybe if you push too hard things might spin out of control in a way that you would regret. And that's the question about the president-elect. Does he really have that grasp or not? Maybe he does, but he, as I said, partly because he hasn't held press conferences, he hasn't made himself available, it's very hard for the public, not just the press, but the public, to evaluate how he's making his decisions.
Again, that could be totally orchestrated, right? We'll just have to see. Rebecca Berg, David Lauder, thanks to both of you. Still to come in the newsroom, it cost them big events and big business. Now, North Carolina is taking steps toward ending its transgender bathroom dispute.